I'm Chimwemwe Mangazi with Business Time on Times. It is a magazine program where we bring you business and economic news stories making headlines. In the program today, Minister of Finance optimistic of economic growth in 2025. Also in the program, Secretary to Treasury Betchani Tchereni discusses budget discipline and economic growth. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. Finance Minister Simplex Chicholabanda has announced a projected 4% economic growth for 2025. This comes as the Treasury completed stakeholder engagements on tax reforms aimed at driving recovery and sustainable growth. Speaking during pre-budget consultations in Blantyre, Banda said while Malawi continues to grapple with effects of external shocks, key macroeconomic indicators show signs of recovery. Benedetta Chiwandamia was there and now reports.
The third and final pre-budget consultative meeting, which took place on Friday in Blantyre, was dominated by a push for tax reforms, calls for fiscal discipline, and prioritizing sectors that will spur economic growth. Malawi Confederation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry Chief Executive Officer Daisy Kambalame proposes raising the threshold for the additional 10% corporate tax from 10 billion kwacha to 30 billion kwacha, citing kwacha devaluation and inflation impacts.
What we are noticing is that because Malawi is going through so many economic challenges, we are squeezing out money from the private sector to try and finance some of the public debt that is out there. And as a result, we are shrinking the operations of the private sector. But we need that production for us to actually engage in exports, in import substitution. So what we are looking at, where are the measures where we can try and provide some relief, and also look at how can we grow our production base here in Malawi, because unless we get that, we're not going to have a thriving private sector. And as a result, the goals that we've set for ourselves under the Malawi 2063 are never going to be achieved because the private sector is not thriving. We need to find ways of attracting investment. I'll give you one example. Today we talked about the super profits tax, which is 40% for those companies that are making profits beyond 10 billion kwacha. Now, when you do that, what you actually also are sending is a signal to possible investors saying, when you come to Malawi and you make 10 billion kwacha, which is almost equivalent to $5 million, you are making super profits. Whereas in our neighboring countries, they know that they will go and make that money and they will only be charged 30% or 20% or 25%. So already we actually are discouraging investors from coming into Malawi. Now, for the domestic industry, they need to expand their operations. Now, if we overtax them, it means some of that resource that was supposed to go to growth, that was supposed to go to innovation and production of new processes. So, for example, if you have a mega farm and you want to look at processing and value addition, you cannot do that because that money is now all being used to service your tax obligations. So what we're trying to do is to try and provide relief for the private sector so that at least they can be able to invest and co-invest, especially for production.
Chief Executive Officer for the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Malawi, Noel Zigowa, recommends broadening the tax base and optimizing revenue collection.
The main issues that we delivered today were, one, looking at the revenue generation of the government. Secondly, how do we look at investments in priority sectors? And thirdly, how shall we manage the forex? The systemic challenges that we were referring to, one of them is the evil of corruption. That's the major one, because we are looking at the unfair advantage that others take over other people, because we are seeing that when it comes to the government spending, mostly they do it on procurement. And the procurement, we To us, we are referring to that as misprocurement, because misprocurement takes place when you are buying goods at wrong prices from wrong people and also in wrong quantities. So we are looking at how do we address the issue of misprocurement in managing the resources of the government.
On the other hand, National Planning Commission Director General Thomas Chatagalala Muntali emphasizes the urgent need to boost domestic development financing to achieve national goals. Muntali notes that grants revenue fell short by 61% in the 2024-2025 midterm budget review.
You see, this is very encouraging because what it shows is that the Malawians and all the key stakeholders do appreciate that it is important for us to recover the economy by making sure that we look at focuses that can promote growth. Because we can talk all we can about the priority expenditure areas, but if so far we don't create that wealth, then we'll be talking this as a song. In the last budget review, we realized that the grants that were coming from development partners underperformed by 61%, meaning that the resources that we're expecting never materialized. And in so doing, we ended up going into debts. We have amassed a lot of debts as a nation. And therefore, if we are going to recover the economy, and it's quite exciting that everybody is now agreeing, two key elements were coming out: food security and focusing on the productive sectors, principally the agricultural, tourism, mining, and manufacturing. And we believe that the Minister of Finance has taken this message seriously, because if we go back to business as usual, where we are just spending the little that we have, then it's unlikely that we'll get out of the debt. It's unlikely that we're going to generate the forex. The fuel challenges will still continue and everything else. So I think it is a very important discussion that we had from Mzuzu, Lilongwe, and here. And we do believe that the Minister of Finance will take these issues very seriously.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Simplex Chitrabanda stresses the importance of joint efforts to identify budget priorities that would stimulate economic growth and enhance resilience as the nation continues to recover from shocks.
People would like to see a budget that has got revenue expansion in terms of mobilizing domestic revenue. But also people would like to have an investment-centric budget where we don't just focus on consumption, but we focus on investment. And this is a productive kind of budget. Last year, it was 30%. I think it excited many people. This time around, they want more. And I think this is quite a good response from people. And it has given us homework to work on our budget to make sure that the budget that we develop and present before Parliament should reflect the aspirations of Malawian people. But also, most importantly, is the fact that in all the three regions, people are able to appreciate where government has done well. In Mzuzu, they were able to tell us that mega farm and NIF initiatives are very good in terms of improving and increasing agricultural productivity. We also had a submission from academia in Mzuzu from Professor Singini, who actually appreciated the fact that for the first time, using own resources, we've been able to construct state-of-the-art library, which is a model in Central and Southern Africa. That's a plus. But also road infrastructure. These are some of the issues that they appreciated. Areas of concern, yes, cutting waste, but also trying to making sure that we become compliant to implementing, the budget accordingly, so that there is no alignment and allocation of resources. These are particularly issues that came out. My assurances: we shall never have another Malawi. This is the only country we call home. We shall never have another time. This is the time for us to contribute. And we shall never have any other person apart from us in Malawi who can actively contribute towards coming up with a Malawian user-friendly but also a responsive budget that responds to the aspirations of Malawian people.
With the pre-budget consultations concluded, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs is expected to present the 2025-2026 national budget in Parliament in February 2025. The budget is expected to be passed in Parliament before the end of March this year, setting the stage for the nation's economic agenda in the coming fiscal year.
Secretary to Treasury Betchani Tchereni has indicated that Malawians should understand that budget discipline is at the core of implementing any financial blueprint from his office. I caught up with Tchereni and he explains that once the budget is presented and passed by the Committee of Supply, it becomes law, authorizing the Minister of Finance and the Treasury to manage expenditures and collections.
So every time I get a phone call, I get to know that this phone call is about asking for money, asking for some of our assistance through the Reserve Bank for foreign exchange for people to buy certain strategic commodities. But we also have to make sure that we are disciplined cadres in the manner that we discharge our duties. So in that manner of discipline, we are looking at the budget as a law. So when the Honourable Minister of Finance goes in Parliament and then he presents the budget, and then the Committee of Supply goes, and then a vote by vote consideration happens, and then the budget gets to be passed, it becomes a law, which means that it is authorizing the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Secretary of the Treasury to make those spends and also the collections in terms of revenues. So in terms of the spends, the vote by vote, we now have to look into issues of funding and then disbursement, guided by the budget. So some of those expenditures, they will need foreign exchange. Some of those expenditures, they will be in Malawi. So then the budget is always in two parts. There is the ORT, where you're talking about daily operations of public sector. It should be happening, it should be things. The salaries, the pensions, water bills, etc. That must be happening. But also you need to make sure that the developmental aspect, which is the second one, is also happening. So if there's a need for a road, there's a need for a school, there's a need for a hospital even, and many other things, they need also to be happening. But so as you're doing that, you should be thinking about how do we propel the economy using the budget. Can we use the budget to propel the economy? So that task then comes in, because you can look at the figures. It will tell you that 70% of the total budget, for example, for the 23 or 24-25 budget, 70% is the ORT, the developmental and or investment part, was just about 30%. So that means that if you have seen a house being built somewhere, it's part of the 30%. But the challenge arises because that 70% actually consumes about 90% of the total collection, which MRA and other MDAs will have collected on behalf of the Secretary of the Treasury. So how do we distribute these resources now? That becomes to be the challenge. That's why through the budget, Parliament authorizes the Minister to also finance a deficit via borrowing. So you will see that the Minister of Finance will go on the financial market to do some borrowings, will go on the financial market to liquidate some assets so that we can also do some borrowings. But we do that within the law. If there's going to be extra borrowing which is not in the budget, then we go back to Parliament to say, honourable members, there is this, then we bring that as a financial bills. I think you saw in the midterm review, we brought into Parliament a number of financial bills, Kuwait Fund, for example, the World Bank. We are trying to see if we can see Badamanga rising, if we can see that rising as well. So that's the task that's at hand. So now, when those requests are coming, they come to the office, you look at the request, you simply have to marry it with the budget. the particular MTA was approved about. So an MTA will come and say we need to be funded so much. If that is not in the budget, by law, you cannot displace, you cannot fund. If it is in the budget, by law, I am compelled to fund for that. All right. So some MDAs, they will not care about what the law says. They will still bring you those requests. But we sit down with them and discuss with them. We say, okay, fine, this is important, yes, but it's not in the budget. My heart does have some trouble. It bleeds, especially when many MDAs, they will be just managing. And that's what I don't want to see happen as SDO. Just managing is where you are able to pay the salaries, pay the benefits, you are able to get fuel, pay rent, to run around. Right? That's all R&D just for. But then what about the mandate? If the mandate is not being fulfilled, then that becomes to be a challenge. Then that becomes to be a problem, because if you are an MDA and you have a mandate, the number one thing must be you must make sure that the activities to ensure that your mandate is fulfilled are being financed and are being funded. When you do that, you will say that yes, the budget is achieving its transformational role. So those are my headaches every single day. If an MTA brings a request and I believe that it's not a request, that is the transformation according to their mandate, then I say no, people become a bit unhappy. But we have done so many times in those areas, discussions between me and the Honorable Minister. We do get to have meetings at least 3 times every week, and the phone calls are numerous. We do discuss, say, do we do this, do we do that, we do that. Along the way, there will be unbudgeted issues. We do have what we call unforeseeable vote. For example, when we had the mass funerals after the Chikangawa plane crash, we used that vote to finance OPC to run those funerals. But there are also a number of things that will happen, and people think that that vote has got everything, but it doesn't have everything. In fact, it's not a big vote.
The Cannabis Regulatory Authority has partnered with the Malawi Bureau of Standards to strengthen quality control and safety measures for cannabis products in Malawi. During a signing ceremony of the MOU in Blantyre, CRA Director General Ketulo Salipira described the Memorandum of Understanding as a crucial development of the industry. Our journalist Benedetta Chiwandamia witnessed the event and now reports.
Cannabis Regulatory Authority Director General Ketulo Salipira describes the partnership as a crucial development for the industry. He emphasizes the necessity of collaboration, noting that the authority, as a new entity, requires support in enforcing standards and ensuring product safety.
You know, the Cannabis Regulatory Authority is working in different areas of regulation of the cannabis industry. However, we saw that alone we could not enforce or manage to work alone. We needed some other departments, organizations, institutions to complement us in the areas where we were lacking, and especially in the areas of enforcement of standards. We relied on Malawi Bureau of Standards, who are also a body that has been entrusted by government, to ensure that quality products are being sold to the public, or the public is consuming what is good. So because of that, we actually consulted MBS for a possible partnership so that we work together, we help each other, we complement each other as we move along this journey. Most people nowadays, people are really enlightened. Whenever they want to consume something, they would want to see, is it really a genuine product? Has it been certified? In terms of the quality, is it of good quality? So with the coming in of Malawi Bureau of Standards, which is going to help us certify those products, it is going to bring consumer confidence. And in terms of the market as well, even the international market is going to rely on our products. They can really know that these are genuine products that have been certified by the National Standards Body, which is very good. Unlike before, when people would just make their products in their kitchens, probably in their companies, and then they bring and they start selling those things to the public. Now, going forward, what we're going to do is all products that are not certified by us, jointly with the Malawi Bureau of Standards, then those ones must be taken off the shelf.
Malawi Bureau of Standards Director General Betchani Tchereni stresses the importance of standardization in the emerging cannabis sector. Tchereni says through the agreement, MBS will assist in developing standards that align with international benchmarks to ensure Malawi's cannabis products are competitive in both local and international markets.
We have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Cannabis Regulatory Authority. The significance is that together we will be able to promote standardization in the cannabis products. There were gaps, as you are aware. Cannabis Regulatory Authority is a new authority and it has joined the National Quality Infrastructure. They need our support in terms of testing of their products that they are monitoring, but also in terms of implementation of standards that we are developing in their thematic area. We will together participate in inspections and quality check. What we did on our part as a national standards body was to provide the process for standards development, Malawi standards development, in a number of cannabis-related products. And in developing these standards, we mirrored our standards with the international standards so that our technical regulations are comparable with our development partners and trade partners. We worked with the Cannabis Regulatory Authority in developing these standards as they are experts in this area. So we already are taking into account knowledge from research, knowledge from experts, and also taking advantage of existing literature at the international scene for such products. That way, our products will have opportunity to enter the market properly, having mirrored our benchmarks with those within the region. The formal market is adhering to standards. There are cases where we have informal markets that are not adhering to standards. And we carry out market surveillances so that from time to time we thrash out the informality from the markets. But the formal markets that we are working with are adhering to standards without much problem, because we also have extended our information and outreach so that the knowledge gap among businesses and producers is narrowed down.
The agreement includes provision for joint inspection and quality checks, as well as development of quality standards for cannabis-related products.
With that item, we've come to the end of today's edition of Business Time. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Chimwemwe Mangazi. But always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Bye for now.